At first it was only a thin blue line across the diseased green clouds, a hairline crack that made the jungle below pause in its own sick way. The vines stopped writhing. The swollen fungus bulbs seemed to hold their breath. Even the demons, those howling knots of teeth and tentacles, turned their warped heads upward for a heartbeat. Then the crack widened and everything went mad. Sergeant Elias Marius of the Cadian 177th was reloading his lasgun with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Around him, what remained of his squad fired into the fog, their beams of red light vanishing into the roiling mists that smelled of rot and metal. Something huge screamed somewhere ahead, a sound like a hive city's sewer system collapsing all at once. Trees twisted in agony as a hulking shape pushed through them, its body made of glistening, rotted meat and rusted armor, its mouth opening sideways, full of needle teeth. "Hold the line!" Marius shouted, even though the line had already broken twice. Private Kellen was crying as he fired. "It's not dying, Sarge. Emperor, help us, it's not." The creature's belly burst open, spilling smaller slug-like things that hit the ground and began crawling toward them, leaving trails of corrosive slime. Lossfire scorched them, but they just kept coming, laughing with voices like clogged drains. And then the sky cracked fully open. Brilliant blue and white light speared downward, cutting through the green gloom. Every corrupted tree, every demon, every terrified human was drowned in the glare. Marius flung an arm over his eyes, feeling the hair on his arms stand on end. The air hummed like an overcharged power pack. Something was falling through that light, wrapped in fire and screaming energy. It hit the ground like a meteor. The impact shook the jungle. Rotten trunks shattered, fungal growths burst like sores, and demons were flung into the air in pieces. A concussion wave threw Marius flat on his back, knocking the breath from his lungs. For a second there was only ringing silence and drifting dust. Then the glow faded enough for him to see. At the center of the crater stood something he had never seen before in any catechism or primer. Tall, sleek, and forged from blue and magenta armor, it was shaped like a warrior but clearly not human. Plates of shimmering metal curved over a frame built for speed and precision. Its eyes burned cyan, scanning the battlefield with rapid, focused movements. Energy hummed along its limbs as if it was holding a storm inside itself. Arcee took in the scene in one super-fast sweep of her sensors. The atmosphere was wrong, tainted by exotic particles that made every diagnostic ping twice to be sure. The life forms nearby were mostly fragile organics in badly damaged armor. Their weapons primitive but surprisingly organized. The monstrosities closing in were not Decepticons, not any species she had encountered along the war-torn spaceways, but the energy she felt bleeding from them triggered every combat protocol she had. Warp corruption. Something like dark energon mixed with insanity. "Great," she muttered, her vocalizer auto-adjusting to the local language in a fraction of a second. Definitely missed the exit. One of the slug-like demons that had survived the blast hissed and launched itself toward Marius, who was only halfway to his feet, lasgun lost somewhere in the muck. Its mouth opened wide, dripping foul slime straight for his face. Arcee moved before she consciously decided to. Her thrusters ignited in a bright flare. She shot forward, slammed a metal knee into the creature midair, and hammered it into the ground hard enough to splatter. With a fluid motion she brought her forearms up. Hard light blades bloomed from both wrists with a rising hum, searing blue-white in the corrupted gloom. Dozens of demons shrieked and charged. Marius watched, half sprawled in the slime, as the stranger became a blur of motion. She slipped between clawed limbs and gnashing maws like she was dancing, blades cutting perfect arcs that left glowing afterimages in his vision. Every strike was a kill. She decapitated something that looked like a tree with too many mouths, spun, and drove a heel into another demon's chest so hard its back exploded. Glowing ichor sizzled where it hit her shields. Guardsmen who had resigned themselves to dying in pieces stared instead. The unknown metal warrior was cutting down their nightmares like they were training drones. "By the throne," someone whispered. "Is that a night construct?" "I don't care what it is," Marius rasped, scrambling for his lasgun. "Just keep firing." Above the chaos, the sound of massive engines rolled across the sky. A gunship punched through the clouds, its hull a brutal wedge of ceramite and adamantium painted deep blue, trimmed in gold. A stylized winged symbol glowed on its prow. Heavy bolters swung out and roared, vomiting explosive shells into the demon horde with lethal precision. Creatures burst apart in sprays of ichor and greasy smoke, their bodies unable to withstand the hail of mass-reactive ammunition. A vox-amplified voice thundered from the craft. By order of the Adeptus Astartes, cleanse this corruption. For Ultramar and the Emperor. The gunship descended, dust and spores swirling in its wake. Its side ramp slammed open, and giants stepped out. The Space Marines hit the ground like falling statues of living metal. Blue power armor encased them, gold icons and purity seals fluttering against scarred plates. Their helmets turned in perfect synchronization, glowing eyepieces focusing on threats with machine-like calm. Heavy bolters barked in their hands, each controlled burst a promise of annihilation. Arcee paused for half a second, optics narrowing. These new arrivals were powerful, advanced compared to the terrified humans, but their tech was bulkier, less refined. Efficient, though. Very efficient. The largest of them strode forward, his armor adorned with extra honors and a halo-like crown mounted above his helm. A captain, her translation suite supplied, drawing on the human soldiers' shouted prayers and chatter. He landed near the edge of the crater, boots cracking the contaminated earth. He stared up at Arcee, and she stared back, blades still humming. Around him, Marines adjusted their aim, weapons tracking her center mass. Unknown construct, the captain's voice boomed from his helmet speakers, calm but edged with warning. Identify yourself. This world is under the protection of the Ultramarines. Any Xeno's presence is subject to immediate purgation. Xenos. Arcee didn't know the word, but the tone carried enough familiar meaning. Alien, outsider, threat. Her grip tightened on her blades. She could feel the demons regrouping at the edge of the clearing, drawn by fresh rage and fear. There was no time for posturing. Name's Arcee, she shot back. I just saved your people from being turned into sludge. Maybe save the death threats for the things with slime dripping out of their mouths. Something massive chose that moment to roar behind the captain. The ground shook as another demon pushed forward. Bigger than the others, its body bloated and stitched with rusted chains, its chest a gaping wound full of gnashing teeth. Smaller horrors tumbled out of it, hitting the ground with a wet slap and slithering toward the humans. Without a word, the captain turned his back on Arcee and raised his power sword. Blue lightning crawled along the blade. Ultramarines, he commanded. Advance. He charged, his squad moving with him in perfect armored unity. Arcee swore under her breath and dove into the battle at his side. If the humans had been stunned when they'd first seen her, they were struck silent now. She and the captain fought like a single engine with two minds. He was a walking bastion, his sword carving great, burning gashes through demon flesh, his armor shrugging off blows that would flatten tanks. She was speed and precision, threading through openings in his defense, intercepting strikes that slipped past his reach, her blades slicing limbs before they could land. The bloated monstrosity tried to trample them both. Its foot came down, and Arcee slid under it, driving both blades into the tendon-like growths in its ankle. It toppled forward, shrieking. The captain surged in, vaulted up its crashed bulk with impossible strength, and drove his sword down into the back of its neck. Warp stuff exploded outward in a violent gust, evaporating in the cleaner, harder energy that crackled from the captain's sword and Arcee's blades. The remaining demons faltered and fled, their connection to their champion severed. The battlefield fell into uneasy quiet, broken only by the distant echoes of more fighting in the jungle. Arcee straightened, retracting her blades in a whirl of energy. Her armor was spattered with things that probably qualified as biohazards in every galactic database. She rolled one shoulder, servos whining faintly. You fight with skill, the captain said, standing tall beside her, sword tip resting in the muck. Skill and purpose. I am Captain Gaius Aurelius of the Ultramarines' 4th Company. Arcee, she repeated. Autobot, scout, soldier. Very far from home. Before he could reply, a new sound cut through the clearing, the cold hiss of hydraulics and the clack of boots on metal. The gunship's ramp lowered further, and a slimmer human figure descended, flanked by robed servitors whose eyes glowed with implanted optics. This one wore a long black coat marked by a golden rosette and carried an air of authority so heavy even the surviving guardsmen fell to one knee. Arcee's scanners immediately tagged a worrying number of concealed weapon signatures around him. "Inquisitor," Aurelius said, his tone flattening. "Inquisitor Yarrick Valen," the man confirmed, surveying the carnage with a calculating gaze. Half his skull was metal, plated and socketed with augmetics that whirred softly as they focused on Arcee. "It seems Vardo's 9 has gained an unexpected visitor." He stepped closer, hands folded behind his back. "A self-willed construct," he mused aloud. "Unknown make. No recognizable imperial design, no Mechanica sigils, no warp taint. And yet you stand amidst demonic corruption unharmed." Arcee tilted her head. "Where I come from, it's polite to say, 'Thanks for the help,' before you start interrogating someone." Valen's mouth twitched. "Under normal circumstances, yes. These are not normal circumstances. Your arrival coincides with a massive warp incursion. That makes you relevant." "Warp again," Arcee muttered. "Let me guess, that's what you call the thing that feels like 1,000 angry ghosts screaming through a broken energon line." "An imprecise description," Valen said, "but not entirely inaccurate." A low rumble shivered through the ground. All three of them turned. Far across the jungle, the clouds were boiling inward, swirling above a new, rising structure. It was like watching a tumor grow and fast forward, a tower of flesh and rusted metal pushing up from the earth, ribs and girders fused together, enormous chains anchoring it to reality. At its peak, the sky bent inward, forming a swirling wound of rancid green and violet light. Marius began to pray under his breath. Servitors whispered corrupted machine prayers as their sensors overloaded. Even the surviving demons at the jungle's edge seemed to shrink away from the growing horror. "The rift is stabilizing," one of the robed adepts croaked. "Something is forcing it open from the other side." Arcee stared at the swirling storm, and a chill ran through her neural net. In her memory, she was back on Cybertron, racing beneath a sky torn by Decepticon artillery. An experimental space bridge hung above the planet like a silver ring, crackling with unstable energy. She remembered the explosion, the split-second decision to dive into the storm to shut it down from the inside, and then waking up here. It was the same energy. Different flavor, same dish. "If that thing fully pushes through," she said quietly, "you don't just have a local problem. You've got a planetary one. Maybe worse." "Then we must destroy it at the root," Aurelius said. "We will strike the heart of the rift and sever its link to this world." "With what?" Valen asked sharply. "Bolter shells and faith? We are dealing with an intelligence that understands our weaknesses. This is no random tear. It is a focused wound. And now we possess an anomaly that arrived through a similar breach." He looked at Arcee. "I believe," he said, "you know more about tearing holes in reality than you admit." Arcee met his gaze, neon optics flickering. "Where I come from, we call it a space bridge. It warps space to connect 2 points. When it goes wrong, it looks a lot like that." She gestured toward the growing tower. "But theirs is twisted, corrupted by whatever disgusting energy you people have let leak into everything." "Not you people," Valen said dryly. "Blame the forces of chaos for this blight. But if your kind have mastered such travel, perhaps you can unmaster it." Arcee's battle instincts were screaming. Going closer to that rift meant willingly entering the heart of the corruption. But backing off wasn't an option. The demons weren't just attacking. They were holding the area around the tower, defending it like a hive around its queen. She vented a breath of hot air. "Get me close enough to whatever is anchoring that thing, and I'll see if I can disrupt it. No promises. I'm improvising with someone else's nightmare tech." Valen studied her. Aurelius watched him, hand resting on his sword hilt. "Very well," the Inquisitor said at last. "We go to the heart of the storm. If you betray us, machine spirit, I will reduce you to scrap with my own hands." She smirked. "You can try." The gunship cut low through the corrupted jungle, engines howling as warp winds buffeted its hull. Below, the trees had transformed completely. Their trunks were now cords of sinew and metal, branches ending in grasping claws. Eyes bulged from knotted bark, watching the craft pass with hateful awareness. Occasional bolts of warp flame arced up, splashing against the gunship's shields. Inside, Arcee knelt on the deck, one hand braced against a ribbed support as the craft bucked. Across from her, Aurelius stood like a statue, barely swaying despite the turbulence. Valen paced along the interior, muttering into his vox, issuing orders for planetary withdrawals and extermination protocols. "You are unafraid," Aurelius said, looking down at her. "I've seen ugly things before," she replied. "Decepticon warships, planets chewed apart, titans falling from orbit. This," she gestured toward the viewslit where the tower of flesh and metal loomed larger with every second, "is near the top of the list, though. You fight like an Astartes," he said, "with discipline and purpose. Yet you are not human. You claim allegiance to Autobots. Yeah, soldiers who fight to protect life, not crush it. Though sometimes the line blurs." She looked at him for a moment. "What about you? You look like you've been doing this a long time." "Since I could walk, I trained," Aurelius said. "My life is war. My purpose is duty. There is nothing else." "That's not true," Arcee said quietly. "There's always something else. Someone you wish you'd saved. Someone you're still fighting for." He was silent, but a small shifting of his jaw behind the helm betrayed him. Valen's voice cut in, harsh. "Drop zone in 30 seconds. Auspex readings are useless. The warp storm is distorting every return. Visual confirmation only." The ramp slammed open again, and heat crashed into them like a physical blow. The air outside shimmered with toxic energy. The tower loomed ahead, now close enough that they could see details. Faces stretched across its surface, screaming silently. Massive rusted chains driven into the ground by bone spikes, demons clinging to its sides like ticks. They dropped into hell. The moment their boots, or in Arcee's case, armored feet, hit the ground, the demons surged. Waves of them rolled toward the small landing zone, claws tearing furrows in the fleshy ground. Bolters opened up, laying down a wall of fire. Arcee's blade snapped into existence again with a roar of energy. She transformed once into vehicle mode, wheels biting into the pulsing ground, her sleek Cybertronian cycle frame weaving between enemies while Aurelius and 2 of his Marines used her as moving cover, firing from her flanks. She cut back into robot mode mid-leap, blades driving through 2 demons at once as they tried to flank the captain. They pushed forward, step by brutal step, toward the base of the tower where the warp rift churned like an exposed organ. The closer they got, the worse the world felt. Reality stuttered. Sometimes the ground beneath their feet was metal, sometimes meat, sometimes a dizzying patchwork of both. Voices whispered nonsense words directly into their minds. Marius stumbled once, trying to swat away phantom insects that crawled across his eyes. At the base of the tower, something waited for them. He stepped out from a cavity in the structure, each stride shaking the cables that tethered him to it. He wore armor that had once resembled that of a space marine, but now it was swollen and warped, covered in pustules that pulsed with vile life. Tubes ran from his chest into the tower behind him, pumping corrupted energy back and forth. His helmet was fused to his flesh, horns breaking through the metal. "Mortals," the Chaos Lord gurgled, voice like a clogged drain backing up. "And a little metal toy. You come to witness perfection." "Identify your link to the rift," Valen demanded. "So we know exactly what to destroy." The Chaos Lord laughed, a gut-deep bubbling sound that sprayed filth onto the ground. "I am Nergalath, the blessed anchor, the rot-bearer. This world is already ours. You are here only to entertain me as it dies." Arcee zoomed her optics in on his chest. The device fused there beneath the boils and plating pulsed with familiar patterns. Energy oscillations similar to the space bridge. Twisted but recognizable. "There," she said. "That thing in his chest. It's feeding the rift, tying it into this place. We cut that, we hurt the tower." "Very well," Aurelius said. "We remove his heart." They charged as one. Nergalath met them eagerly, his massive, corrupted blade sweeping in wide arcs that churned the air. The first Marine who tried to flank him was caught mid-stride and hurled aside, armor sparking as he crashed through a cluster of lesser demons. Arcee darted in low, slicing at the cables connected to the Lord's back, but a swarm of winged horrors peeled off the tower and dove at her, talons scratching against her armor. She slammed into them, spun, and burst upward on her thrusters, carving them from the sky in a storm of blue fire. Below her, Aurelius engaged Nergalath in direct combat, his power sword meeting the corrupted blade again and again in showers of unnatural sparks. Each impact sounded like a bell being rung in a tomb. Valen focused on the chest device. "All fire on the conduit," he shouted. Surviving guardsmen and marines shifted their aim, pouring bullets and lost fire into the tangle of metal and flesh around Nergalath's torso. The Lord roared in annoyance. "You gnats dare!" Arcee dropped from the sky like a spear. Her blades drove deep into the conduit embedded in his chest. Instantly her system screamed as warp energy surged into her, trying to overwrite her logic, to fill her with visions. She saw Cybertron drowning in flesh, Autobots bloated and moaning praises to a fly-covered god, Optimus Prime's noble helm reduced to a skull crowned with mold. She gritted her mental teeth and forced the images away. "You don't get to rewrite me," she snarled, shoving her own energon-charged power into the device. It flickered, sputtered, then began to crack. "Now!" Aurelius roared. He stepped into Nergalath's guard, took a brutal hit to his pauldron that sheared away metal and gouged his shoulder, and drove his power sword up through the Lord's exposed throat, out the back of his head. Corrupted blood gushed, burning where it hit the ground. Arcee tore the device free. Nergalath's scream cut off as his massive body convulsed, then collapsed, shaking the mutated landscape. The rift reacted instantly. The tower shuddered, chains straining. The wound in the sky flared wildly, arcs of warp lightning ripping across the clouds. For a terrifying moment it grew, swelling like it was going to engulf everything in a single planet-sized gulp. Then the energy turned inward, and all that force slammed into the stolen device in Arcee's hands. Her world became white noise and pain. She fell to one knee, clutching the conduit as it tried to drink her spark dry and fill it with the warp instead. She could feel the structure of the thing now, the twisted lines connecting it to the rift and, beyond that, to other places. Other universes, perhaps. Paths branching through a sea of nonsense. "I can redirect it," she gasped, voice distorted through her speakers. I can rewire the collapse. Turn it into a bridge out. But it's going to need a big, stable energy source to anchor it." Valen's eyes widened. "Your core." "Yeah. My spark." She felt it pulsing brighter and brighter, as it prepared to do something utterly reckless. "I might be able to drag this storm away from Vardo's 9 when it folds. I don't know where it'll end up. Might not end up anywhere. But your world will live." "You owe this world nothing," Aurelia said, stepping closer despite the energy whipping around her. "You arrived here by chance. Your war is not ours." "My war is stopping monsters who think they can do whatever they like to whoever they like," Arcee said. "Doesn't matter what universe they're in." Valen's expression warred between cold calculation and something like reluctant respect. "If you succeed, the Imperium will never know what truly saved this world. At best, you will be footnoted as an anomaly. At worst, they will still declare you heretic and order your destruction on sight." She laughed, distorted by the rising hum of her spark. "It's been a long time since I did anything for the sake of being remembered. Besides, I kind of like the idea of being your weird little secret." The ground around her began to crack, light pouring from the fissures. The tower's flesh peeled away, disintegrating into ash that was instantly sucked upward. The rift convulsed, shrinking and expanding in rapid pulses. Aurelius did something then that startled Valen more than the demons had. He went down on one knee, massive frame bowing for just a heartbeat. It wasn't worship. It was a warrior's salute. "You fought as a brother," he said. "You chose to stand with us. For that, Arcee of the Autobots, you have the thanks of the Ultramarines." Valen stepped forward and, against every instinct he possessed, laid his hand briefly on her armored shoulder. "And the gratitude of the Inquisition," he added. "May the Emperor judge you kindly wherever you go." "Try not to blow up your own reality while I'm gone," she said, light flaring now around her chest, turning her outline into a blazing silhouette. "You're doing a good enough job fighting everyone else's nightmares as it is." She pressed her spark fully into the device. The universe screamed. Blue-white light erupted from her, spearing up into the rift. The warp storm bucked and twisted. Its corrupt colors burned away from the inside. Demons all across Vardo's 9 shrieked in unison, dissolving into ash as their lifeline was severed. The tower collapsed inward, chains snapping, bone spires shattering into dust. For a moment, everyone on the ground saw something impossible. A glimpse beyond the wound, a view of countless stars swirling in patterns that made no sense, threads of light tying them together. Arcee floated in the center of it, arms outstretched, her spark blazing like a sun, tethered to Vardo's 9 by a single narrowing line of energy. She had one chance to aim the collapse. Her thoughts flickered to Cybertron, to the Autobots who would be wondering where she had gone, to the war she'd left behind. She wanted to go home so badly her spark ached. But the bridge was wild, unstable, feeding on warp energy. There was no telling where it would spit her out, or if she would survive the trip at all. Maybe that was okay. Maybe what mattered was that one world she'd never heard of until today wouldn't die screaming. Soldiers fight so someone else can see another sunrise, she told herself. She pulled. The rift imploded with the force of a collapsing star. Light swallowed everything, roaring louder than thunder, brighter than any weapon. Shields flared and cracked. Auspex units overloaded and exploded in showers of sparks. For several long heartbeats, there was nothing but white. When it faded, the sky above Vardo's 9 was clear. No swirling green clouds. No bleeding light. Just a cold, distant scatter of ordinary stars and a thin ribbon of aurora where the wound had been, as if the universe wore a scar now but was healing. The tower was gone. In its place was a broad crater of glassed earth, still steaming faintly. In the very center, half melted into the fused soil, lay a small curved plate of blue metal. Aurelius walked toward it slowly, weapons lowered. Valen followed at his side, coats stirring in the cooling wind. Guardsmen stood or knelt in stunned silence, their prayers coming out as hoarse whispers now that they realized they were still alive. The captain knelt and pried the plate free. It was barely larger than his palm, its surface scorched black in places, but enough of it remained to show a familiar magenta stripe and the suggestion of an unfamiliar sigil. He turned it over in his huge fingers. Valen's augmetic I-word softly. "Is that all that remains of her?" Aurelius was quiet for a moment. "Matter cannot be destroyed so easily," he said finally. "She is somewhere. Or she is many places. Or she is at peace." Valen could have ordered the fragment surrendered to the Mechanicus immediately, tagged as Zeno's artifice, sealed in a vault. Instead he said, "The official report will state that the rift collapsed due to unstable warp resonance triggered by the death of its anchor. There will be no mention of autonomous non-human combat constructs." "Agreed," Aurelius said. "Some things are better kept between warriors who shared a field." The Inquisitor glanced sideways at him with a faint, wry smile. "The Inquisition does not share secrets lightly, Captain." "And yet here we stand," Aurelius replied. Valen looked back up at the sky, at the faint aurora still shimmering where the tear had been. "Do you think she reached her home?" he asked quietly. Aurelius closed his fist around the fragment and slipped it into a compartment on his belt, next to purity seals and oath scrolls. "I think," he said, "that whatever hell or haven she found, she met it head-on, blades drawn." Far away, in some corridor of space that did not obey normal rules, a flicker of blue light drifted among the stars. For less than a second, it coalesced into the silhouette of a slender Cybertronian warrior, optics burning bright, still standing, still ready. A heartbeat later, it vanished into the dark, leaving only echoes and the memory of a voice that had laughed in the face of gods and monsters alike. On Vardo's 9, as the years passed and the scars of the warp storm slowly healed, soldiers would tell stories of that day. They would speak of ultramarines and inquisitors, of demons and collapsing towers. But most of all, they would remember the stranger who fell from a broken sky, fought like one of the Emperor's own angels, and chose a world that wasn't hers over any chance at her own safety. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, one more legend joined the countless tales whispered in trenches and fortress monasteries. The legend of the metal warrior with burning blue blades, the one they called just by the name she'd given them, Arcee.